Welcome to the No Dig Gardening Explained, the Change Underground System, a series of mini webinars. So this is session 5 of 5, postponed from yesterday for unforeseen circumstances. We've covered why no dig in the first session, the importance of heirloom seeds in the second, why no bare soil and weeds are an important thing to bear in mind, and of course the dangers of pesticides and herbicides and setting up a system that doesn't need them. So today we're getting into the Change Underground System. Come along for the journey. The Change Underground System has been developed over the past 30 plus years by myself. It's been tested on sites from 1 square metre all the way up to 54 acres, which is about 22 hectares, with stock and without. Now, the whole system was inspired by a few people, 3 in fact. The first was John Seymour, the second was Masanobu Fukuoka, and the third, of course, the much loved and missed Bill Mollison. John Seymour showed it could be done back in the 70s when I first stumbled across his work. Masanobu Fukuoka introduced me to biomimicry and the idea of what less can I do. And Bill Mollison introduced the idea that gardening was a revolutionary act. And this quote from Bill has stuck with me the whole time. The greatest change we need to make is from consumption to production, even if on a small scale in our own gardens. If only 10% of us do this, there is enough for everyone. So the Change Underground System is based on 4 principles. 1, biomimicry. 2, animals and plants together. 3, complexity, and we'll get to that, don't panic. And 4, observation. So biomimicry, we learned in the earlier lessons and seminars and sessions that nature layers, so we layer. No bare soil, that's what the layers cover. Use heirloom seeds, that is open pollinated, because that's what nature does. Very few intentional hybrids in nature. And it allows us to save seed either in the ground, that is in our garden beds, or indoors. Animals and plants, they're part of a co-evolution system. As plants came first, obviously, and then the animals, but as grazers hit grasslands adapted, and forests adapted to pigs running through them and whatnot. The two go hand in hand and have an interdependence which is worth copying as part of our growing systems. And let's not forget the third kingdom, the fungi. There's a lot more being learned about the fungi and the role they play connecting trees to trees, the so-called wood wide web. The mushrooms we see above ground are just the fruiting parts of these interesting, they're not plants and they're not animals, they're the third kingdom. These interesting life forms that join the plants underneath the ground and allow for growth above it. Now, complexity. We need to build in complexity because, strangely enough, as I discussed a couple of sessions back, the more complex a natural system is, the more stable it is. So we go by complexity of species. So in our veggie garden, we put tomatoes, pumpkins, silver beet, peas. But also by cultivar. So these, Amish, banana, black Russian, Indian River, are all cultivars of the one species of tomatoes. We may not be able to get that many different tomatoes into our garden, but the idea is to get as much variation within cultivar and within species. As I said, they're all tomatoes. And by usage. So we select things to grow that are for bottling, to eat fresh, to eat dried, and also things that can provide compost later when they're finished their growth cycle. Observation. This is really key to the whole system. We observe growth rates, the influx of pests and predators. Predictors, yes. Well, that's an, that's an interesting typo because the pests are predictors. And it's worth remembering that every time you see something that seems out of balance, it's telling you that something somewhere else is out of balance. So I'll go with that. Influx of pests and predictors. Observation of ripeness, so which plants ripen first in each particular cultivar. Do you want to save those seeds, or do you want to save the later ones? Or just the ones in the middle of the bell curve? It's really important that we observe weather patterns. Now we understand these are changing at the moment under the effects of climate change. And no two summers are the same, no two springs, of course. They never have been. But the variation between year to year is even greater. So if we keep our eye on what's going on with the weather, we have a better chance of understanding what's going on in our gardens. So what does all this look like on the ground when we put all four together? Well, to start with, we plan the garden, then we construct the garden, then we plant out the garden, and then, of course, yet again, we observe. So, planning. Here's a plan for a 1 metre by 1 metre square herb garden. You can see it's got perennials and annuals there. Rosemary's a perennial, sage, thyme, and a lot of tarragon sort of if there's no frosts. But the others are treated as annuals, and even the tarragon can be too. Parsley, provided you keep cutting out the seed stalks as they come up, will pretty much keep producing for a couple of years. But once you let it slip and it actually does go to seed, then you'll have to start again, or just let the seeds regrow. That's what a 1 square metre herb garden could look like. Now here's one for a 1 square metre vegetable garden. Probably cut off the bottom line here by the looks of things, and over here on the legend down the bottom there it says chicory, which would be in there, which is a leafy green. So you'll notice that there's a lot of leafy greens in there: the rocket, the bok choy, the basil, the lettuce, mizuna, silver beet, spinach, and chicory. And then you get a little bit of radish in there, which can also eat the leaves, but it's a root, and of course the bush beans, which run across the back. If you don't like bush beans, you could put in peas on the side that faces away from the sun. So this is a southern hemisphere plan. You could flip it on its head, just rotate it through 180 degrees, and you've got a northern hemisphere plan. But there's room there for succession. So as the radishes come out, you could extend the lettuce across. The rocket you could keep slashing and harvesting. The bok choy you can replace wherever that is there. The bok choy you can replant with other things as you go along, or you could replace that whole bok choy area with calendula or marigolds, as in an attempt to give some more companion planting cover there for your other crops. Now this is the same idea taken to a larger extent. It's a 4.5 square metre bed. It's 3 metres long by 150 wide, 1.5 metres wide. It's about 50 square feet if that's the system you're using. We'll just get the picture up a bit bigger if we can. Yeah, might be cutting off the labels along the bottom, but the yellow one there is marigolds, the red is broad beans, and the orange is sunflowers. And we've missed the top up here too, so above the marigolds there's rocket, and above the kale there's cress. And you can see I've got marigolds top and bottom. Now this is the plan I've been using at work. It works reasonably well. Mini cabbage do real well in any of the beds. Kale did exceptionally well, and above the kale you've got the cress and the rocket. They just went berserk. The zucchini and the squash okay. Beetroot did really well. Peas are a bit iffy over summer where we are. They get a bit humid where we live, so you get a little bit of rot. And the pumpkins have taken off out of the bed and are going either side along the pathways. Lettuce did really well, as did the carrots. Tomatoes are a little bit overgrown by the silver beet, but we can adjust that for next year. And these are the things you do by observing. And the sunflowers, that's the best I've ever grown sunflowers, was those bits in each of the beds. And the broad beans did really, really well too. although towards the end of summer they started to get a rust on them. So again, same as the peas, we might just save the peas and the broad beans for growing in winter, autumn to spring, say, so that we harvest them in spring. Okay, so that's what a plan looks like. And then this looks like, there's the bed. See, the broad beans are up, the cress and the rocket, and a few of the cucurbits and whatnot are up, a couple of the peas. And then just the lettuce are doing well. The carrots, tomatoes are starting to show. And then as you get along later in the season, it gets a lot bigger. We've got a little frame there for the peas to climb up the back. And that's another angle of it. The lettuce is starting to fill out. Those were cos lettuce. They were put together a little bit, painted a little bit too closely together for mine. But I'm running a disability program, so we just go with whatever's planted and we adjust around it. You can see the cucurbits, the squash, the zucchini and the pumpkins starting to kick off at the back there. Just a few sunflowers poking through there, and of course the marigolds looking wonderful. At that stage the broad beans were just in flower. So, do you want to grow food? Do you want to grow your understanding? Do you want to grow yourself? And do you want to start now? And why start now? Well, a lot of us in this world are self-isolating at the moment, which means we've got time on our hands to do things. You might not have a backyard to do it in, but if you've got a balcony, you can probably do one of the variations on the 1 square metre garden, which is always very fulfilling to see how much food you can get out of such a small area. And with all the sickness that's going around at the moment, it's probably not a bad idea to eat more healthily. And if that means you're ready to change your diet to a more healthy diet, now's a good time to start. And of course, we can all be part of the climate change solution. The thing about no-dig beds that are fully covered and layered is that they actually draw carbon out of the atmosphere and put it into the soil as organic matter. So it's a win-win-win, really. So how do I start now? Well, you could go to worldorganicnews.com/TCU1 / TCU stands, of course, for the Change Underground. And one, that's the first of the pages you can go and have a look at. Have a read, and then we'll get you to sign up, and then we'll see you in the members only area. So Change Underground is a membership site. It's for brand new growers, people looking to go no dig, and a community that's actually making a difference. If any of those seem like you, we'd love to see you there. So as I said, it's a membership, and to get you started, we've got a 7-day trial for $1, and then it's $28 a month. Or you could pay $197 up front, which for the year, which saves over 40%. And as the growing year grows for a year in most places, unless you're under snow for 4 months of the year, but even then there's things you can be doing, getting seed started, or even making seed selections during the long nights of winter. Okay, and all of these come with a 30-day money-back guarantee. No questions. I and you don't need the aggro of any issues. So no questions asked. Just have your money back. So come and change your world. We'd love to see you there.